Geeks and geekettes, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, comic book fans the world over, gats and gittens, take your seats for another deep dive, another lesson, another exploration of comic book insider knowledge with me, Chuck Dixon, on a show I humbly call Ask Chuck Dixon, where you get to ask me, Chuck Dixon, about what I do for a living. What I do for a living is I write comic books. Let's not waste another second of your precious time. Gate Comics 9746. He wants to know, which comic book would you say was your biggest challenge to write? From not being enthusiastic about the character, deadlines, or editorial nonsense. How did you pull it off? Have you ever walked off a project? The toughest thing I ever had to do was I adapted some of Robert Jordan's books from his Wheel of Time cycle. And it was tough because not a lot happens in these books. I mean, visually. I mean, there's character development and characters discover things about themselves and others. And there's a lot of walking around and traveling and riding horses. But there's not a lot of conflict visually. There's not a lot of fighting. There's a lot of preparation for fighting or fear that fighting might happen or traveling to a place to fight. But not an actual lot of like sword action going on. And that presented a challenge. The first chapter of the book, of the first book I adapted, was the entire chapter was two women watching two other women read. That's hard to turn into comics, but what I did was every time a battle was mentioned, like remember 20 years ago at the Valley of Sliggith or whatever, when the two grand armies met in a duel to the death. Well, I would take that sentence and make it into like 3 pages of fighting. Just get some eye candy into the book. And also to show the world a little bit more because they're all talking about, the stakes and the dire circumstances and possible awful consequences of something, but we never actually see any of that, or we very seldom see it, or we don't see it often enough to actually have it resonate in the comic book. I mean, I can't adapt a book to comics word for word. So I gotta kind of go in and cut and slice and move things around. Mostly that's what I did on the Wheel of Time stuff is I moved events around in order to get some good visuals sprinkled through the story on a regular basis. And that was a tough one. I think I think there's like 4 trade paperback volumes adapted by me of this stuff. It seemed like more. On the flip side, because I was doing this, I got contacted to adapt some Joe Abercrombie fantasy novels, and whoa, they really lent themselves to comics. I mean, there's always something going on, always something visual happening, lots of action, and lots of short scenes you could intercut between and stuff like that. So they were real easy. And but I only wrote, I think, 2 of them. And then basically Joe Abercrombie learned how to write. I taught Joe Abercrombie how to write comics himself. So he did the rest of his own adaptations, which is great. That's good. And he did a good job. Another challenge for the opposite reason from Wheel of Time in every way is The Hobbit. It's another epic fantasy that I was asked to adapt. But, I read The Hobbit as a middle schooler. I loved it, and I look forward to the opportunity to adapt it. But here I was presented with too much. I had too much going on, too many great visuals, and I really had to pare stuff down. I had to cut out a lot of my favorite stuff, and anything that didn't move the story forward had to go because it's a comic book. We only had so much real estate. I think this is maybe 132 pages total. Not enough room, really, to do The Hobbit justice. So I had to cut out Bjorn, one of my favorite characters. Lots and lots of scenes I had to trim because, like I said, if it didn't move the story forward, we didn't have room for it. So that was tough for the opposite reason that Wheel of Time was tough. There was too much. That was an embarrassment of riches of wonderful material to deal with. As far as things I've quit, I've told the story before. I told it even recently. I quit Captain America, Heroes Reborn, Captain America, Rob Liefeld project because the artwork was just so horrible. When I saw the initial pencils, I'm like, I'm out of here. I don't want my name on this. And I quit. But generally, I'll stay. Even when the going gets tough. Even when editors are tough. I'll push back against an editor. Sometimes that's more fun than writing a book, is to push back the arguments. And I've had plenty of them. But yeah, I walked off Captain America because it was embarrassing. And I didn't want to be part of the embarrassment. But I still have to talk about it every once in a while. Peter Bowl. He asks, I was wondering if you've seen S. Craig Zahler's movies and what you thought of them. Bone Tomahawk, Brawl in Cell 99, Dragged Across Country. I've watched them all and I love them. I believe he's one of the most underrated directors currently working. I don't think he's underrated within the industry. I think people are looking at the guy's stuff. But I don't think he gets the juice he should have. I think that I've read about him in articles where they interview him, and generally what he does is he raises the investment money for his movies on his own, which is why he can't be more prolific than he is. I'm sure that Zahler would love to make one movie a year, but he's got to get the investment together, and it's generally from people outside the film industry in Texas and Louisiana. And he sells them because he makes the kind of movies that they want to see. So they're willing to invest in them. And he keeps his budgets low, and he's an economical director, and, he delivers. These aren't huge earners, but they pay back their investors with dividends, I'm absolutely certain. And also they're evergreen. I mean, they reach larger and larger audiences as they move through streaming. My first exposure to him, like everyone else, probably was Bone Tomahawk, a Western that will flip your head. I mean, it's different. I mean, I love Westerns, and I love people playing with the genre to some extent. I don't like my Westerns mixed with, zombies or aliens. But this one, just brutal. Just a brutal Western. It just takes a nasty turn toward the end. And, I'm not spoiling anything because anybody going into this has been forewarned that this is not the bonanza. This is something else. And but its attention to period detail, the way he draws characters, his deliberate pacing, the guy always puts the camera right where it should be. He blocks out scenes well, and just what I admired most was the guts to go forward with a movie like this. Because it's not for everybody. He knew this wasn't going to be a huge hit at the box office. A super brutal period Western. But he did it anyway. Just like his next movie, Brawl in Cell Block 99, which basically tells about Vince Vaughn. He's a former con. He works security. And he bends his moral compass just once and him and his wife end up paying for it. And this movie, my oldest son and I, we're both big admirers of Zahler. And we watched this movie one afternoon. And at the end of the movie, I was completely blown away by it. I turned to my son. I said, how long was this movie? Because I had no idea. I'm usually good at estimating. And I never stopped it to see how far into the film we were. And I said, how long was this movie? And my son said, it's 2.5 hours. I'm like, what? I thought it was like 88 minutes. 2.5 hours? You've got to be kidding me. It went by like zoom. I wondered if it was even feature length It was paced. Now, it's deliberately paced. It's not paced like a Michael Bay movie. It's deliberately paced, but it's so absorbing that you do what any great movie makes you do. You lose track of time. The movie maker has taken over your sensibilities of time and is now playing with them. And again, another movie that's just brutal. I mean, what else is a movie called Brawl and Cell Block 99 going to be? But it delivers on everything you would want to have seen from a movie with that title if it was made in like 1973. It really delivers. And yeah, it's just, I mean, what an amazing flick. And Vince Vaughn is terrific. And you got Don Johnson. Don Johnson always helps in a movie. And then Dragged Across Concrete, also enjoyed this. Kind of takes the buddy cop film and goes as dark as you could possibly go with it. Again, brutal, deliberately paced. And what I didn't realize about Zahler was he's also a music composer. And he would compose, both in Brawl and Cell Block 99 and this movie, there's like this 70s faux soul music playing, on radios and things like that. He wrote all that. I was like, I never heard that song. Well, I must have missed that one. I just assumed all the music was actually from the 70s. But no, he composed music, faux 70s music that was so convincing it fooled me. I was even wondering, hey, who's performing that? It's like, I think I might have heard that on the radio once. No, I never did, because I never heard it until this movie. But you got Vince Vaughn and Mel Gibson, and they have this really brittle relationship. Gibson gets off some hysterically funny lines, even though it's not a comedy. Just the dry humor, dry as dry can be. And just like in the previous movie, is it Jennifer Carpenter? I can't remember. The girl that played Dexter's sister for so long is in both of these movies and just has a horrible time of it. She always has a horrible time in anything she's in. But yeah, big Zahler fan. I'm looking forward to what he does next. He is credited, I can't remember the name of the movie, so I'm not going to talk about it. It's a recent Western. And he's credited with writing it, but I found out that he only suggested that they make a Western based on this old paperback novel. And they did a pretty bad job of it. So I'm not blaming him. So, and I heard that Ridley Scott is going to make a Western based on one of his screenplays. So I look forward to that. Okay, Twin Spin. Peter Boll is back with Zahler has written many novels and a few comics. Have you read any of his other works? And the short answer is no. I wasn't aware of any of that, so I will be checking them out. So you slid in there on that Twin Spin. That should have been part of the other question, but it is a separate issue. But no, I will check out Zahler's other work. Because I like where he's coming from. Peter Boll again. Why didn't you get a triple spin? I have no idea. That's on me. Did I mess up? Let's give you one anyway. Triple spin. I recently saw some preview pages of Horseman 3, and in them, Hector was in the stable, and his stable is like his bat cave. And on a table, there were multiple different helmets for the horsemen. You recently talked about how much you love heroes who have different suit designs for different occasions. How much have you thought into Hector creating multiple suits? Well, the thing about Hector is his stuff is basically off the rack. It's store bought. He didn't create this stuff. He may have customized it or whatever, but largely it's body armor and things like that. Now he makes the helmet himself, but the rest of his outfit changes as he needs it. I mean, if he needs an extra bandolier of ammunition, or he thinks he might need some, reinforcement to his armor, he'll do that. Fireproofing things, the same things that I would always have Batman think about when he was looking at a costume change or a costume enhancement. So it's kind of off the rack, but Joe Bennett and I are talking about some future changes. There's going to be a change in his situation where he'll have a little bit more funding to create new equipment, new gear, and stuff like that. So you'll see some changes to the stable. You'll see some changes to his costume. His costume is very much evolving. So, I don't know. You get a second triple spin, which is weird because I don't know what happened here, but I missed the triple spin and then picked it up later. You should have gotten a quad spin here. I am sorry, Peter. Wait a minute. That was your triple spin. I'm messing up all over the place. I just put your triple spin in the wrong place. There's no more questions from Peter. Our next question is from the lovable John Morgan Bat Neal. He says, I'm loving the choosing favorite films by directors. How about a couple of suggestions? Sergio Leone, Coen Brothers, Tarantino, George Pal. In recent videos, I talked about my favorite films from my favorite directors. And John is like, hey, you missed a few. So get back on that horse, buddy, and tell us. Sergio Leone, this is a tough one. Now, Sergio Leone didn't make a lot of movies, but he made a lot of good ones. So I'd say he was batting about 900 making movies. My first one I'm going to jump to, that I would jump to in my head, is Once Upon a Time in the West. One of my favorite movies ever, and a truly operatic Western. I quote lines from it all the time, whether people understand where the quotes come from or not. It's the greatest Western revenge story ever written. And boy, there's been a lot of Western revenge stories, but this one is the coolest. And I won't go into the plot if you've never seen it, because you really need to go into this movie cold. I did, and was absolutely floored by the ending of it. And it's slow burn paced. It's the most spaghetti Western ever made. The soundtrack was recorded first, and the actors would perform against it. That's how operatic the movie is, and it's an amazing piece of work. And it's one of the few, I'm not going to say only, few spaghetti westerns shot here in the United States rather than in Spain. So you actually get to see Monument Valley and big parts of Utah that those kind of landscapes simply don't exist in Spain. So, and Bronson is incredible. Henry Fonda playing a bad guy, just total scumbag. That's a treat. But I gotta give it best Leone film, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, because my mark of movie do I like best is which one have I watched the most. And it's a real horse race between Once Upon a Time in the West and Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, because I've lost track of how many times. But I'm absolutely certain I watch Good, the Bad, and the Ugly more often, because it's such a seamlessly made quest story, which is not an easy thing to do. And Eastwood and Van Cleef and Eli Wallach are so great playing off each other. And again, the music plays a big part. I don't know if they recorded the soundtrack before filming on this one, but Morricone just, kills it. That scene of Tuco running through the graves and that soaring music playing behind him it's just great cinema. No matter what genre, even if you hate westerns, Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is an amazing film. The Coen Brothers, this is another tough one, because these guys are somewhat prolific with a dozen movies out there. I got into the Coen brothers early. A friend of mine said, "There's this movie Blood Simple. He's playing at a small art house theater in our area." I said, "You got to go see this movie. I saw it last night. You got to go see this movie." So I did, and I fell in love with it. And I thought, well, I'm going to keep an eye on these guys. And Raising Arizona showed up a little while later and did not disappoint. In fact, at the request of my youngest son, we watched Raising Arizona again just a few nights ago. And it's a good movie. It's one of my favorites. It's highly, like all the Coen brothers, highly quotable. Her womb was a rocky place where my seed could find no purchase. I mean, just awesome, awesome dialogue, acting. Nicolas Cage at his liveliest, which is really saying something. Holly Hunter, the rest. I can't give it my favorite because there's some things about it that betray the Coen brothers' low budget roots. Their reach exceeds their grasp in some scenes in this movie, where particularly the interiors at the Arizona house. It's like they didn't have the budget they wanted for those interiors, so they just went with it because they weren't making studio films. Hudsucker Proxy is probably their first and last studio film. But I love the movie. I hope I haven't ruined it for you. Next time you watch it, you go, yeah, this set is kind of cheap. And then Barton Fink. I love Barton Fink. It's a movie about writing. It's a very accurate movie about writing. It's also a nice slice of Hollywood history from Hollywood's golden age. It's smart. It's nuanced. It takes a couple of viewings to really get what it's about, even though it's entertaining on the first viewing. And what I like about it is it's a movie about writer's block written because the Coen brothers had writer's block on another feature called Miller's Crossing. It's also a good movie, a very, very good movie. But I love Barton Fink, and again, very, very quotable movie. And Tony Shalhoub is amazing as a Hollywood producer. Every time Tony Shalhoub shows up in a Coen Brothers movie, he steals every scene he's in. But that's probably true of everything Tony Shalhoub's ever done. But John Turturro is great. John Goodman is amazing. Everybody is terrific in this film. Steve Buscemi in a very small but effective role. John Mahoney is amazing as a William Faulkner type screenwriter. It's a great movie, but still not their best. We're getting to their best. We're inching up there. Fargo is a stylistic murder mystery that takes the murder mystery and just flips it on its head. Takes the crime film, flips it on its head, and just an astounding piece of work. As spare can be, it's taciturn and terse. The suspense is terrific. All the humor works. Again, another incredibly quotable movie. How about that undercoating? We still want that undercoating, right? Still not the best. Not the best. We're getting there. We're reaching it. Big Lebowski. Probably the Coen Brothers movie I've watched the most, but I'm going to break my own rule. It's still not their best. I probably watched the most because of all the Coen Brothers movie, it's my wife's favorite. So we watch it at least once a year, sometimes twice. Again, it's super, super quotable movie. Tons and tons of great stuff. John Goodman, again, amazing. Jeff Bridges in his first Coen Brothers movie. And he apparently liked working with the Coens because he would work with them once again. Unlike Tom Hanks and Mark Damon, who hated working with the Coen brothers, but screw them. What do they know? Because the Coen brothers will not allow for improvisation. They will not allow ad-libbing. John Turturro was allowed to ad-lib a couple of lines in Miller's Crossing. Just because he was so into the scene, they allowed it. They will not allow anyone else to do it. Jeff Bridges, on the first day on the set, said to John Goodman, "Where are the blue pages?" referring to the rewrite pages. And Goodman's like, "What?" He goes, "Well, where are the blue pages? Where are the rewrites?" And Goodman says, "Oh yeah, you never worked with these guys before. There are no rewrites. The script is the script. The script is God in a Coen film." And I think that's what's amazing about it. And that's why they didn't make a whole lot of studio movies. They weren't willing to go back and revisit their work. Once they had it in their head, once they had it down on paper, that was it. It was, carved in stone. Okay, their best film is No Country for Old Men. And there's no getting around it. They had the impossible task of bringing a Cormac McCarthy novel to film. And while they left out some stuff, they left out one of my favorite scenes, they capture the novel perfectly. And they capture Cormac McCarthy's message perfectly. The ending of this movie, I'm not a real emotional guy. I don't like sentiment in my movies and things like that. But that final scene, Tommy Lee Jones talking about the dream he had about his dad, I mean, that is an amazing piece of writing because, McCarthy wrote it, but it's an amazing piece of direction in the way the Coens presented it. And of course, it's an astounding acting job on the part of Tommy Lee Jones. I mean, you just feel it. You see it in his eyes, what he's feeling. Is complex layers of emotion. This is an amazing movie, absolutely amazing movie, and that they were able to take what was seemed like ethereal on paper and put it on film. And of course, Javier Bardem embodying Sugar, the villain, the psychotic, disturbing villain. And James Brolin as well, playing kind of the everyman, the Cormac McCarthy everyman, who makes one bad moral decision. And in Cormac McCarthy's world, that damns you forever. There's no such thing as being a little bit bad. You're either all in or you're not. And this really absolutely nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. So a masterpiece. One of my favorite films of all time, not only one of my favorite Coen Brothers movies. Now for Quentin Tarantino. Quentin Tarantino's tough. Rather prolific, 10 movies. And, again, my rule, which one did I see the most often? The Kill Bill movies, particularly Kill Bill Part 1. I've seen, I don't know how many times. I went back to the theater when this was initially released, and I saw it once a week for months, because it stayed in release for a while. And I recently went with my oldest son. He gave me a birthday gift of the Kill Bill, the whole bloody affair. Was showing at a theater in our area, and we went to see it. And I loved it again. I was like watching it for the first time. So, I would go there, because by my own rule, which one have you seen the most often? But, it is a typical Tarantino movie in that it's a hodgepodge, it's an homage, it's a mosaic of stuff from 70s movies that Tarantino loved. And he just sort of all drawing it down and boiling off the parts that aren't needed and just creating this, crazy kung fu revenge epic. And yeah, I mean, it's pure Tarantino, but it's not his best film. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, undeniably his best film. I always said that everybody was waiting. You'd often read, well, when is Tarantino going to make a serious film? When's he going to be a serious filmmaker? Well, first of all, he is a serious filmmaker. He just doesn't make films that are particularly that serious. And do we want to see, The English Patient by Quentin Tarantino? Do we want to see some Oscar bait piece of crap that's all, emotional and, we learn a life lesson from it and all the rest? No, we never wanted that from Tarantino. but I gotta say, this is probably his most serious film, even though it's totally gonzo, particularly at the end. But it's heartfelt, and my buddy Graham Nolan always says he likes this movie, but it's so self-indulgent. There's so much time spent with Leonardo DiCaprio's character shooting an episode of Lancer, and all of the stuff that goes on the set and everything else. And I'm like, yeah, but I excuse him that. I excuse Tarantino all of that because all of his movies are self-indulgent to a certain degree. And for a guy my age who loved the same movies that Tarantino did and loved the same TV shows that Tarantino did, I guess I'm being self-indulgent too, because I'll excuse him that stuff all day long. I love the scenes on the TV backlot, the studio backlot, shooting the movie. And yeah, I understand for a lot of people it just slowed the movie down to a crawl, but I don't care because Tarantino had something to say in those scenes about creativity, about acting, about the people who make the entertainment that we see. And I thought it was really interesting and just cool stuff. So I got to give it to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood as Tarantino's best film. And it doesn't break my rule because I've seen it a whole lot. It's a relatively recent film, but I think I've seen it 5 or 6 times. So George Pal. Well, there's not a lot to choose from with George Pal in my mind. He made a lot of stuff I wasn't interested in, but one that really, captured my imagination as a kid was War of the Worlds, which would show every year on our local CBS affiliate Science Fiction Week on the early show and the late show. And War of the Worlds was which I didn't even know was in color until I saw it many years later. Because our little black and white TV. But War of the Worlds is a good adaptation of the H.G. Wells novel, pretty much straight up, no frills, which is what makes it great. There's because Wells's novel is awesome enough. It's just updated to the 50s from the Edwardian period, and that's cool. And but the effects, everything in it, just works terrific. I love the fact that you don't really see much of the Martians, which makes them a lot more scary and good stuff. But I got to give it to his other H.G. Wells adaptation, George Pal's Time Machine. I saw this at a Saturday matinee when I was a kid, and I loved it. I love anything about time travel, and I just love this story. It's crazy, it's wacky, it's violent. So it's everything I wanted in a movie as a kid. Rod Taylor's terrific in the lead role. It changes a bit of the Wells stuff. And I was disappointed a few years later when I read the novel and he didn't include a scene toward the end where the time traveler goes far into Earth's future. And those scenes are like, they're engraved in my memory. They're such terrific scenes. But anyway, it was well produced. The period stuff really works. It feels period. For a kid watching a bunch of guys sitting around smoking cigars talking about science could have been boring, but Pal makes it engaging. And even as a little kid, 9, 10 years old, I was enraptured. And because it takes a little while for this movie to get to the action, and but all the setup is good. It's good, engaging stuff. Well acted by a terrific cast. So this one gets the nod, and the fight with the Morlocks, that was everything I wanted in a Saturday matinee feature. Bullwhips and monsters. Brandon Woodall. I recently watched the entirety of Kolchak the Night Stalker, both 2 TV movies and a TV series. I found it both interesting and worth the watch. As such, I'm curious if you've seen it yourself, and if so, what are your thoughts on it? Related to question number 1, given your comments on why you dislike Scooby-Doo, I can't help wondering if you'd like it better if it was in the same vein as Kolchak the Night Stalker, what with the monsters being real and all. I didn't see a lot of Kolchak the Night Stalker when it came on because I worked nights. And I didn't catch up with the series till later, and I gotta say I was unimpressed. I love the first TV movie. It's a great TV movie. Ratings giant at the time. And the second one's okay. They kind of lost their way a little bit. And then the series I really didn't care for because it was kind of hokey jokey. It was a different set of people producing it. Richard Matheson was no longer involved with it. And it just looked kind of cheesy. The two TV movies look good. And they look like feature film quality for the most part. The TV show looked very much like a TV show, overlit, never very serious. The monsters are kind of dopey. Darren McGavin isn't given the same level of material he was given in the TV movies, so kind of forgettable. I do remember this show was on a Friday night, and Friday night was always death for any kind of a genre show like a horror or science fiction show. So they stuck it on Friday night. Worse than that, they put it against the Planet of the Apes TV show. And you divided your small potential audience for both of those shows, you divided it in two. So they put Night Stalker on a different night, Monday night, it would have killed. But Planet of the Apes and Kolchak basically killed each other and only ran one season each, which is a shame. And I never got to see Planet of the Apes. So I've never seen an episode of that. I must remedy that. I would like to see that series. But anyway, yeah, not the biggest fan of this TV. Love the character. I even wrote a short story for one of the anthologies about 20 years ago or more. But yeah, not a big fan of the show. Now, Scooby-Doo, one of the many reasons I didn't like Scooby-Doo, not to keep beating up on Scooby-Doo. I don't like to hurt animals, even animated ones. But the monsters not being real wasn't the worst thing about Scooby-Doo. The worst thing about Scooby-Doo was the lazy, inept, stupid writing. And I lay this down to the fact that I think Hanna-Barbera, they were the first anti-entertainment company ever created. I really think that they would look at the material being produced and going, well, this is too funny, or this is too smart, or this is too exciting. Oh, you've made this story far too interesting. Oh, wait a minute. What's going on here makes too much sense. So I really do think, because you would think every once in a while they would hire a writer who would accidentally write them a good story, but this never happened. And I can't blame that on the writers. I blame it on the low expectations and the dismally low estimation Hanna-Barbera had for its juvenile audience. I blame it on them because they oversaw this stuff, and I really think that they wanted to make their stuff bland and mediocre. I don't know if they were afraid that networks would step in and would cancel. And it's like they didn't want to waste any work, so let's make it boring and pedestrian as possible, so it'll just sail through, and we don't have to do any rewrites or reshoots or redraws or anything like that because we don't want to spend that money. And also, Hanna-Barbera, this stuff just always looked cheap. Repeat animation, limited animation, all the rest of it. And you got to think, man, they had to be making a fortune on these things. They could have spent a little bit more money to make these shows more quality. You think of the enormous audience that Scooby-Doo had. And then you look at later on in the 90s into the 2000s, they're making Scooby-Doo movies for Cartoon Network, and they look 1,000% better than anything that was produced in the 60s to a much, much smaller audience. So you got to think, what's the economics here? So yeah, not a big fan of Hanna-Barbera. So I don't think much would have helped Scooby-Doo if changing all of the frills and the framework and everything else wasn't going to change anything. They needed to get good writers and then let them write. And I'm not going to say, and they might have had good writers, but they wouldn't let them write. And that's my biggest problem with not just Scooby-Doo, but everything that Hanna-Barbera produced except the Jetsons. Twin spin. Here we go. Brandon Woodall is back with Most comic writers I've seen, even in the indie space, tend to divide their stories into chapters. Yet, I've noticed that most Rippaverse issues are about the length of a collected trade, about 100 pages, each telling one uninterrupted narrative. How do you make something like that work? Well, actually, the format has changed. We are down to 45-page issues. I don't know what else to call them, volumes. And this was, I guess this is what the market will bear. This is what the readership wanted. I don't know. They could bring the price point down a little bit, because producing a 100-page book, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. My stories for Rippa, my initial ones, ran between 85 and 90 pages. Now some of the recent things you've seen, I've actually been split in two. They were initially written as longer volumes, split in two, which required writing some additional bridge pages, doing a little bit of rewriting on my part to make sure there's some sort of a logical conclusion to each part. But they were split after the fact. Now, in recent months, I've written 45-page Rippa stories. So that's where we are now. Who knows? We may go down even further, but to shorter, like comic book length issues. Now, this all goes back to writing for the trade. What was cool initially at Rippaverse was I was just writing the trade. I wasn't writing to the trade. I wasn't writing chapters to the trade to be collected later. This was just boom. It was a 100-page book, 100-page story. Cool. That's great. But I still thought in terms of acts and arcs and cliffhangers and, action sequences and segments and all the rest of it, so that I built things in. That's why it was easy for the Rippa crew to divide my longer stories into two, because I would have natural breaks in the story, natural cliffhangers, or natural conclusions, or segments that would end in an exciting way that would make you want to read the next one. And I would just build them into the story. Back when, in the 90s, when we were told at DC, I don't think anybody at Marvel thought much about this, but DC was very much into the trade paperback program. We were told, remember the trade. Well, this turned into write for the trade, which, terrible mistake. Don't write for the trade. Still write for the monthly, but think about the monthly in terms of 6-issue arcs. Each 6 issues should be able to be collected into a trade. Not a big deal. But still write in all of the, segmented stories, so that you've got natural cliffhangers and ups and downs and everything else. And too many writers looked at it as like, oh, well, I'm writing a feature film now. I'm writing, the whole story at once. So I don't have to, I can slowly build to my conclusion or my climax the way that so many movies do. I was like, no, because this is a comic. It's initially going to be read monthly. So you're expecting your readers to read 5 issues of setup and 1 issue of payoff. And that's not how you should be thinking about it at all. And so I said, to myself, I'm just going to keep writing what I'm writing, but keep in mind it eats 6 issues. So, and we can apply that to Rippa as well. You don't want to write a story. Comics aren't novels. Comics aren't feature films. We can't dazzle you with anything other than words and pictures. We don't have amazing music or fantastic performances or, brilliant camera work to keep you engaged during the slow parts or during the build-up or development of the story. We got to hit you page 1 and keep hitting you over and over again with things that dazzle and thrill and delight and, whatever. Just bring you into the story and keep you. It's a tough call, but it's got to be done. And it's like, but the trade thing is great. I love the trades. I got walls full of trades. And I love the collections. I obviously, and from a creator's point of view, I love the permanency of, no, it's not just going to be a comic book that gets put out and forgotten next month. Now it's a volume. And it's going to sit on someone's shelf. No one buys a trade paperback and just, tosses it in the garage. You buy a trade or you buy a hardcover collection to keep. So anyhow, hope that answered the question. I just sort of wandered around there in my head. Triple spin. Look at you. You got yourself a triple spin, my friend. Brandon is back with, when it comes to pulps and classic adventure stories, I like lost world fiction, like where the heroes discover a hidden place filled with ancient beasts and lost civilizations. Yet given GPS and satellite mapping, it's hard to believably pull off that kind of story in today's world. Do you think lost world fiction can work in a modern setting? Or is it better set in the past? About the only workaround that I can think of are underground pockets or other planets or another planet. Yeah, I love Lost World stuff. And you know why I love it? I don't know if you've ever articulated this, but it's a voyage of discovery. Burroughs did it the best. But H.G. Wells did it well, Jules Verne, Jonathan Swift. You visit this new world, this new strange environment, and you're exploring it, and you're exploring it along with the hero because he's never been there before. And you're seeing things through his eyes, and you're experiencing things as he experiences them. And that's really what makes these things appealing. And I'm a huge sucker for all of them. Burroughs and all those guys. And I love the Lost World stuff. It's very cool, going to really wacky, weird places and struggling to survive, because most of these are survival stories in the end. And some amazing stuff has been done because it's an amazing world. And it's a big world. And there's lots of adventures to be had in it. And there's lots of places we don't know about. Even today, we don't know about these places because you think about it, GPS and satellite imagery is not going to help you in the triple canopy jungles of a place like New Guinea or Suriname. They're not going to help you there. Maybe Suriname's a desert country. I forget what country I'm thinking of. Anyway, desert. If all this stuff could help you out, then every time we hear, like we hear in Florida down here all the time about some boaters were lost. They were supposed to be back, on Thursday evening and it's Saturday and they're still not back. And they go out to search for them. Well, they don't usually find them until they wash up somewhere. So if all of the stuff was so great, you'd find them immediately. And what they do is to try to find them is they calculate currents and tides and things like that. And there's mathematical equations and mathematical and algorithms and stuff that they've used to like find lost submarines or find lost children in the woods and things like that. So these things aren't perfect. And that's the thing about technology. We all have it. We all have incredibly advanced technology that we own. We own devices that have more computing power, in our pocket than NASA had when we landed on the moon. But we know it's not infallible. We know it often doesn't work. Your cell phone doesn't work. And these technologies can be fooled. It's the whole hubris of the age of information, the age we live in. Whereas like we have the sum total of all human knowledge available to us. No, we don't. We don't. Everything's not on the internet. Plus, 90% of the internet is stupid. It's cat videos or people shouting in their cars. Also, thanks to AI, more and more of what we find on the internet is wrong or a lie. I mean, AI is like a child or a lying teenager, an eager to please child or a lying teenager, and that they'll just tell you what you want to hear, So that technology, it's useless. It's more, and we all know this. And, we have self-driving cars. I mean, and if you've bought a car within the last 10 years, technology is a nightmare, because there's all this stuff in your car that's computerized, it's digitized, it's, connected to this and connected to that. And if one little thing goes wrong, your car doesn't work. I mean, when you get in your car, you expect to turn it on, step on the accelerator and go to the supermarket and come back. And it's really all you want a car for. Well, now it's everything. It's an entertainment center. It's an information center. It's a communications center. And every part of the car is computerized. Every part of it. Your car can tell you what's wrong with it. Your car can tell you how much air is in your tires now. And if you don't pay attention to that, your car will email you or text you and tell you need air in your tires, or you need your oil change. I mean, everything is computerized, making these things more vulnerable to break down, because everything's a chain. Like, if one little thing goes bad, and that's it, car's dead. I mean, if your car battery dies and your car is locked now, unless they give you one of those secret little keys, you can't even get in the car. So you got to call somebody and subscribe to some service, and they help remotely to open the car for you. So where I'm going with this is, why couldn't there be lost worlds? Of course there could be lost worlds still on the earth. But yeah, like you say, under the earth, whatever. Certainly that all of that could happen, because our technology isn't reliable. It's not as reliable as it used to be. Despite all the advancements and all the wonderful, I admit, our phones can do wonderful things. But when they go bad, they go bad. And then what do? Can you borrow someone else's phone? I mean, back in the day, before you had a phone and before everybody had to be communicating and connected to each other 24/7, you had landlines. So you had to be home to get a phone call, unless you found a payphone, or unless a stranger would let you into their house, or a business would allow you to use their phone. You couldn't communicate with anybody. And somehow we were all right with that. But at the end of the day, I mean, if your cell phone, something goes wrong with it, you lose cell service because you didn't pay the bill, or you're out of range, or your phone simply breaks, you're out of luck, because there ain't no payphones. There's no landlines now to go to. There's no backup for you. Back in the day, there was always a payphone. If you had some change on you, you could call home. But now you can't. So, it's like, in one way, it's an enormous advance, and another way, it's not. So, and this is something that, when cell phones first came along, my wife would bring up. She said, well, all those old movies where, the people are, lost somewhere, or, they can't get help. They wouldn't work if there were cell phones. How are you going to write stories where there's a cell phone involved, because the person can always call for help? And I said, no, they can't. There's been plenty of times, I've tried to call you from the grocery store, and I was being jammed at the grocery store. I couldn't get, I had to go outside, and even then maybe not be able to make the call. Or I forget my phone. I'm always forgetting my phone. I know. It's a boomer thing. It's like an old man forgetting his phone, because I don't care. I'm not a cell phone guy. I don't even know where it is right now. It might be in my truck. It might be in the closet. I don't know where it is. I don't care. I don't want to be that connected. I'm ranting. I got to stop. Anyway, I hope you see my point. Don't give up on lost worlds. There's plenty of lost worlds. There's probably lost worlds. I don't know where you live. There's probably a lost world right in the city where you live. Someplace no one's been for a while. It would be dangerous to visit. Quadruple spin. Hey, hold on. Quadruple spin. Here we go. Brandon Woodall is back with, I know you said that much of Steven Spielberg's work comes across as too schmaltzy for you. As such, I'm curious about where the line is for you between acceptable and schmaltzy stories in terms of what stories you consume. Well, I mean, I mentioned No Country for Old Men, and Coen's and how, you know, they'll tell a story that's, you know, emotionally effective without being sentimental, without being like, oh, that poor little girl, you know, or, you know, oh, the family's reunited. I'm tearing up because of the swelling, you know, musical score. But that's all Spielberg. It's all manipulative, and his sort of blinkered view of the world, which is demonstrated in movie after movie, where people are longingly looking off screen in amazement and astounded. You know, they're astounded. They're just gobsmacked by what they're seeing, and then we see it, and it's like, yeah, I guess that's interesting. I guess if I was there, I'd feel like they felt. And his characters are basically created just to have these emotions. They never feel like real to me. They're sort of sketched in. The suburban, you know, the fatherless suburban family in E.T. just sort of sketched in with a few scenes of family life that we're supposed to be able to relate to. You know, and it all just seems false. And it gets worse as Spielberg goes on, because now he's like learned the tricks to manipulate, and he's helped along with John Williams, and he's helped along with, you know, his patented camera movements and everything else. And not to take anything away from him, he is a terrific, when he works at it, a terrific film. I know I'm bitching about Spielberg, and you asked about generally, but hey, you threw the red meat down. He's technically he's an awesome filmmaker when he works at it, but technical isn't everything. I mean, he's a great student of blocking out scenes and, you know, and the rest of it, but it all goes to serve, you know, kind of a hollow purpose. I mean, look at Raiders of the Lost Ark. I mean, he never really had to do fight scenes before, but he does really well. I mean, these are really good. The first gunfight scenes in Marion's bar, not so good. It was the very first gunfight scene he had ever shot, unbelievably. But, you know, he makes it work. Of course, editing helps. And Raiders in particular, it's his best film by far, technically and otherwise, from entertainment value and everything else. And precisely because it lacks sentiment, it lacks any kind of sentimentality. Indy and Marion are quite cynical characters. They're world weary, and they react like people whose best years are behind them. And there's no even in the romantic sequences, there's no sentiment. And the ending of the film is highly cynical. These are all unusual components in a Spielberg film, and he couldn't put in his usual schmaltz and nonsense. Because he was working for it on a career comeback, and he didn't trust his own instincts. So he just did his best to make this film as entertaining as possible, which he should have continued on for the rest of his career, but didn't. And, you know, that's my biggest problem with too much sentimentality in a movie. And also his worldview. And I don't agree with his worldview. I mean, Jurassic Park, the Jurassic Park movies, he flips the theme of Michael Crichton's novel on its head. Michael Crichton's novels, the theme of Jurassic Park, the first novel, is that extinction is a part of nature and extinction is good. You know, we don't want to be competing with terror birds and Tyrannosaurus Rexes for domination of this planet. So extinction is a good thing. That species that no longer have a place on the planet get outcompeted by smarter, faster species and die off. And it's a good thing. Spielberg's stated theme for the Jurassic Park movies is life goes on. Well, life doesn't go on because you made how many movies about extinct creatures? Their lives did not go on. They died out tens of millions of years ago. So your view of the world doesn't have anything to do with reality. The same thing with his most recent film, Disclosure Day, in which characters 2 different times say, don't fear what you don't know. Well, I'm sorry, but you should fear what you don't know. Not fear like, you should be wary of what you don't know. If someone says, reach into this box and don't ask any questions, don't do it. And if you do it, and beforehand you're like, I wonder what's in there, ooh, ick, maybe I shouldn't do this. Well, those are perfectly natural feelings. You fear what you don't know. And you can call it xenophobia if you want. You can also call it common sense. And for a worldview of just believe everything at face value, I'm not lying to you. Don't fear what you don't know. It's just antithetical to any way that I've ever been brought up. But what do I know? So yeah, you want to avoid sentiment in a story, and it's like the best Christmas stories. Every Christmas story wants to be Christmas Carol. They're all based on Christmas Carol. And, and then the Hallmark stories. Well, the Hallmark stories are Christmas Carol too. It's generally someone revisiting their past. But the best Christmas stories, the ones that we love the most, the ones that we watch over and over again, don't have any sentimentality at all. A Christmas Story based on the Gene Shepard stories, there's no sentiment in that story. The dad is angry all the time. There's no sentimental resolution of the story. Christmas Vacation is another one. There's no sentiment there. The movie ends basically with revenge against Chevy Chase's boss. And I could name others, but those are the 2 that come to mind. They're perennials. We watch them every year. Most people watch them every year. Totally free of sentiment. Whereas the more schmaltzy, tearjerker Christmas movies, we avoid. And you can say, oh, Chuck, but what about It's a Wonderful Life? It's a Wonderful Life isn't really sentimental. It's life affirming. That's not sentimental. When we get all teared up at the end of the movie, it's because it affirms life. It's not because that movie is very dark. That movie explores all kinds it goes deep into the wells of human nature, without sentiment at all. George Bailey is not a schmaltzy sweetie pie of a character. We see him in his darkest moments. And he's brought back from that. That's life affirming. That's why at the end of that movie, we are emotionally choked up. It's not sentiment. It's a recognition that this man has literally been saved. In more ways than one. So there you go. I hope I covered that subject. Avoid sentimentality. Unless that's your business. If you write sentimental stuff, you can do sentimental stuff. But it's not going to be great. Luke Lay. Another thing you mentioned is that you haven't read any comics with Stephanie Brown in it written by other people. But what did you think about her becoming Batgirl and just the pure idea? Did they inform you beforehand that it was going to happen? What do you think about her costume she got as Batgirl or any other one she got afterwards? Well, the regular viewers of this are going to be, oh no, he didn't. Because you brought up kind of a sore point for me, and I've explained this a bunch of times in the videos, but I will explain it again since you were kind enough to ask, and I was unwise enough to put this question on here. So, not only did I know they were going to make Stephanie Brown as Batgirl, I campaigned to make Stephanie Brown Robin early on. Not early on, but I'd say from 98 on. I had an arc I wanted to do where the Robin quits. Tim Drake quits being Robin because he gets an offer to be Blue Beetle. Ted Kord is ill and can no longer be Blue Beetle, and he offers Tim Drake the position to be the new Blue Beetle, and Tim Drake jumps at it because Ted Kord seems to be a pretty cool guy. And Tim thinks it's a better fit for him, being more technology based. I mean, he's got more in common with Ted Kord than he ever would have with Bruce Wayne. So, the idea was he would jump over there. We would have a 6-issue miniseries of Tim Drake as Blue Beetle. And in that interim, Stephanie would become Robin. And I pushed it and promoted it, and they couldn't see it. I couldn't see why. I said, the issues of Batman will increase in sales. We'll have a killer 6-issue miniseries with Blue Beetle getting the best sales he's ever had. And then it all goes back to status quo. Tim Drake returns. Something happens and Tim Drake returns to being Robin, and all goes back to normal. And like the minute I left DC, they made Stephanie Robin. And then years later, they made her Batgirl. And they did not tell me they were going to make her Batgirl. They didn't inform me of anything. In fact, I didn't find out, because I wasn't following the comics, I didn't find out about Stephanie being Batgirl until I saw a Stephanie Brown as Batgirl action figure. And I contacted DC and said, hey, am I going to get any cash for that Stephanie Brown action figure? And they said, no, because it's just another variation of Batgirl. And I said, well, actually, it's another variation of Stephanie Brown. And you owe Tom Lyle and I money. And they argued. And of course, they've got an army of lawyers hanging on hooks, ready to go after people like me. So I said, all right, okay, you guys win this time. I'll stop arguing with you about it. But yeah, they didn't keep me very, very heavily informed about any of that. In fact, they never even sent me a comp action figure. I had to. I think a fan, oh boy, I wish I could remember the fan's name. I think a fan ended up sending me one of the Stephanie Brown action figures, which I'm looking at right now in a display case here in my office. So, yeah. So, Luke, you brought up a sore point, but that's okay, because you were curious about it. I wanted to answer your question to you specifically, rather than just say, hey, why don't you just go back and watch all the videos and you'll find it somewhere. So, anyhow. Hey, if you want to have some, if you have some curiosity about something like Luke did, and Brandon, and all the others who had awesome questions this week, you need to contact me at brunobookstore@gmail.com. brunobookstore@gmail.com is where you get to ask Chuck Dixon the questions that appear on Ask Chuck Dixon. Kind of neat how that works. I want to thank you all for watching, listening, subscribing, whatever you do, liking, all that stuff. And hopefully I will see every single one of you down the road.